Hello and welcome to my video. Firzj here, broadcasting from Serbia, Belgrade. It's been 4 months since I left my home country, Russia, and I have a separate video on my channel which explains why I decided to move. Anyway, it is time to share my findings with you, share some stories, and just document my progress after 4 months of staying here in the land of Rakija and Pleskavica. Let's get started. I arrived to Serbia back in January. The first few minutes were absolutely depressing. It was absolutely cold early morning, and as soon as I got out of the airport I was completely lost. Before I moved here I ordered transfer services to Novi Sad, which cost me 100 euros, and I also received driver's phone number just in case something happens. Everything was fine until that moment I landed. It was dark, it was cold, I was with a bag and a large baggage, and I couldn't find a taxi that was waiting for me. It was like 6 AM and nobody worked, and so I couldn't buy a basic SIM card to call my driver and find out where he was. So I roamed around the outer area of the airport asking strangers for directions. While everybody was friendly and tried to help me, they didn't speak English at all. My only hope was to give them that phone number and call my driver. Turns out he couldn't wait for me in front of the airport because of the construction site and police patrol in the area. So eventually we found each other and moved to Novi Sad. It's a beautiful city actually, with a population around 300k. The driver dropped me off at the apartment I booked in advance, but it was still too early to check in and I couldn't contact the host because my phone battery decided to die. Thank God I still had enough strength to go to the nearest pharmacy and ask them to charge my phone for a few minutes, and they didn't send me away. So a few hours later I finally met with the host and they checked me in for a few days. Everything was fine since then, but I was extremely exhausted. I wish I could just relax at that moment, but I booked my apartment just for 4 days and I had to start searching for long-term apartments immediately. First few days were full of uncertainty and I had no support whatsoever. This moment you realize that traveling and living alone is rough. And right before my booking ended I found a small apartment not far from the city center. I paid 400 euros for 30 square meters plus 80 euros for bills. Not great, not terrible. All my salary basically goes to rent and I don't have anything to save. I wasn't really paying attention to this stereotypical Polako mood until I got myself into the local services like banks, post offices, police departments and even grocery stores. From my observations, everyone was so chill, no one really paid attention to queues or was in a rush. The queues are normal here and people just like to chat while waiting. Here's one example on how I opened a bank account at Banka Poštanska. I visited their local branch and I had to fill tons of papers to have them consider and approve my application. This took like a week or so. I came back a week later and they gave me another paper with the identification card for their clients. The physical card was still not ready. It took 2 more weeks to receive the card. 2 weeks passed and I received the card, but they made a mistake. I have no idea how this happened, but they managed to mistype my surname and thus making this card invalid for use. So the employee took my card and told me to wait another 2 weeks, and only then it arrived with the correct details. But wait, there is more. I was still missing one important feature: mobile banking. I filled another stack of papers and they gave me access to my bank account. So in total I've spent a month and a half to receive my bank card and to never come to that branch ever again. I have no idea how long it takes in the US or Europe to open a bank account, but in Russia you can just fill one form on a website and receive your card literally in 2 days, absolutely for free and without paying anything to open mobile banking app. Since Serbia is a Slavic Orthodox country, I had no cultural shock whatsoever. Well, except for the language, which reminds me half Ukrainian, half Slovak and half Russian. It felt like I moved to another city within Russia, to a different version of it, where friendly people just live their life. It is a beautiful country with many historical architecture which strongly resembles Moscow or historical part of St. Petersburg. Some buildings are in good shape, some are not. Serbia definitely needs some renovations, but not like it happens in Russia, where the government simply demolishes old historic houses and builds tasteless high-rise buildings. Speaking of food, however, I have encountered some issues here. For some reason, here in Serbia, it is hard to find anything that resembles Russian cuisine, like blini, pelmeni, pierogi aka dumplings, and buckwheat. All that is extremely expensive here, and buckwheat is only sold at special health food stores. As for the local cuisine, it is simply delicious. They serve meat everywhere, and it tastes different in each place. I think it's a dream country for meat eaters. Definitely not for vegans, sorry. Their traditional food pleskavica is basically a large grilled cutlet made of beef and lamb. It's super tasty and nutritious. And rakia is a strong spirit, around 40% like vodka, but I had no chance to try this alcohol drink because my health condition doesn't allow me to eat or drink everything I want. But as a side note, I must say that I haven't tried local food much because it is expensive to go to the restaurants and it is kinda spicy, so I prefer to cook at home to know the precise ingredients. Okay, enough with the food and architecture. I have some key notes about the local language. Serbian language really hit me hard. I knew not a single word when I moved here, and I had no intentions to learn Serbian language for several reasons. First, I've been learning English since my childhood, and my initial plan was to move somewhere where people speak English on a native level of fluency. Something like US, UK or maybe Germany. It would be much easier for me to communicate with people, work with documents, solve bureaucratic issues, and find new friends. Secondly, I was still questioning my decisions, so I didn't make any attempts to learn Serbian until it was time to move. The third reason, I falsely believed that Serbian and Russian languages were at least 80% identical. While certainly Serbian has many similarities to other Slavic languages like Ukrainian, Russian and maybe Polish, I don't know, sorry. I didn't go into much detail. It is still hard to understand what other person says, even the numbers. I'm still struggling to hear the numbers correctly when I buy a loaf of bread at the store. Although they sound identical, in real communication it is impossible to think and understand quickly. So to this day I count all my goods with a calculator before I go to the checkout counter. And probably last reason, this language is commonly used only in Balkan states, and despite the fact that it is identical to Croatian, Bosnian and Montenegrin, let's be real, it is not a widely used language around the globe. At least the locals are familiar with English language content, and any foreign movies are shown here in English with Serbian subtitles. I made sure of that when I went to see John Wick 4. If you haven't seen it, go check it out, it's a great movie. And since not many locals speak English or try to, I had to learn some basic Serbian words. But it would be barely enough to find a local job here because the job market seeks mostly natives plus English speakers. And I know only Russian, English, a bit of German, a bit of French, and even Chinese when I studied at college. As they say, I know a little of everything, but still know nothing. However, if I plan to stay here and get a residence, I'll have to learn Serbian, but do I really want that? I still have no clue. It is definitely not the perfect country to live for the rest of my life. There are many pros and cons, just as in any country. The salaries are low, the language is not widely spoken, the unemployment rate is probably high, there are some tensions between Kosovo, and the level of corruption is not appealing. Speaking of the actual job, the reason why I still managed to stay afloat in this country is a remote job from Russia. Yeah, sadly, I have just one source of income, and it is from Russia. But don't worry, I'm not sponsoring war in any way. And this job is barely enough to cover my rent. I pay 400 euros for 30-meter apartments. That's exactly how much I earn. And since ruble keeps falling, my salary becomes even more pathetic. As for the food and internet expenses, my parents send me some money via post office because SWIFT transactions are basically banned and money transfer services also charge too much fee. Finding a local job here is like a mission impossible. I don't know Serbian and I'm not an IT guy who knows how to code complex projects, and I also lack commercial experience, so no one needs my services. Moreover, this whole modern market aspect saddens me. I'm talking about the job positions for beginners. Even if it is an entry-level job, most companies want a perfect candidate with 100 years of experience who makes no mistakes and doesn't ask questions. This, by the way, also applies to relationships. relationships. People keep looking for a perfect opportunity and a person to fit all their needs, but in the end both are unhappy. No doubt the unemployment rates are high. The companies basically don't give new employees a chance to prove themselves. And these companies also tend to lie, as well as their candidates about the job position. It feels like a circus to me. Some serious grown-ups play circus to please each other while hiding behind a wall of lies. A beautifully polished CV and a flattering cover letter. I can't overcome all these lies, and some companies simply exploit their employees. Plus, investing too much time in finding a dream job doesn't seem right. I'd rather study something useful for my hobby, something I'm really passionate in life, than just sitting and looking for a job on LinkedIn. I guess I'm just some fucked up person who doesn't understand the rules of the game or miss the whole point. I'm not saying that I don't want a job, I just want everything clear and transparent. I just want to be useful and do good for people while still having enough money and time to enjoy life. And another big problem is probably in me, in my head. I'm an introvert and I barely make any new connections in real life. I was always a humble and a not very talkative person. Why? I don't know. Maybe it was my childhood and harsh Soviet 90s, or maybe my friends didn't care much about me to be called friends. No doubt I like to work alone and remotely. It gives me peace and concentration. But you know, living alone scares me, because no one would inspire or help you or give hugs. And the final part is about my decision. Do I miss home? Do I want to go back? I do, but there are some reasons for me not to do so. Basically, I had pretty much everything. Even though I lived modestly, these conditions were enough for me to work and create content. I had my own place with all the appliances, the computer, the furniture that I really own. The city is much more developed, which I'm familiar with. The stores had plenty of goods despite sanctions, and my parents lived close to me. But here are some reasons to stay. First, I always wanted to travel and live abroad, although not under such life pressure and circumstances, but still, it was a good chance for me to finally start a new life, learn new cultures, maybe make new friends, find a better job and basically grow as a person without any help. Second, politics. Unfortunately, politics can come to your house, whether you want that or not, and change your way of life forever. I was about to be enlisted, and before that I also graduated a military department under my university, because it was a much safer way to avoid 1 year military service, but now I'm on a disadvantage. And back then I also had ulcerative colitis, so it was super risky for me to serve in the army. If I ate something wrong or stressed too much, then I'd be dead. And hazing of junior conscripts, aka dedovщина, is also no joke. And the final reason, just as any person in the world, I wanted to improve my life conditions, but it seems it is impossible to do that at this point without a job and many restrictions applied to the Russians. Anyway, with all that being said, it is time to end the story here. I want to thank you all for watching and listening, and also special thanks to Michael Kumler from my Patreon for being a valuable member. If you want to support me and my channel financially, feel free to check out my Patreon page, because my content is not monetized in any way and I have to rely only on your donations. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a nice day and stay safe.